the light. Turning into darkness, you'd be my escape. Why have we been so easy to unfold? Future might seem out of reach, but we're getting close. Will you follow me when the sky starts to change? Yeah, we won't be afraid. We'll never be the same again. Will you follow me? We won't leave it to chance. We can't write our romance. We'll never be the same again. Will you follow me when the sky starts to change? Yeah, we won't be afraid. We'll never be the same again. Will you follow me when the sky starts to change? Yeah, we won't be afraid. We'll never be the same again. Will you follow me? We won't leave it to chance. We can't write our romance. We'll never be the same
You're streaming with the Fantasy Follow. Week 1 of fantasy football is in the books. It's the TFF Live Monday Postgame show, and it starts right now.
It's a big day of football. You can do this. Make those good decisions. There's never a better time than this week.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Follow. This is the TFF Live Monday Postgame show. We're going to go through all of the weekend games, fantasy football style, talking about all the relevant players, any trends that we see, looking forward towards week 2. And as always, we are here to answer all of your fantasy football questions throughout the show. Even if we are talking about other content, feel free to drop in the chat, get into the conversation, and talk fantasy football with us. That's what we love to do. That's what we're here for. If you're watching on replay, feel free to leave us your comments below. We'd love to hear from you. But either way, let's get right into it. We hope that everybody enjoyed tonight's Monday Night Football game. Big overtime win for the Las Vegas Raiders, 33-27. We'll start out by talking a little bit about the relevant fantasy players in that game. Well, for anybody that was a little bit worried about the Raiders this year, not so much to worry about anymore at this point. Josh Jacobs was just fine tonight. 10 rushes, 34 yards, did have 2 touchdowns. Not a huge total on the ground, but still 17 fantasy points. And a huge night for Darren Waller. I talked a little bit during some of the mock drafts about, drafting Darren Waller or not. He certainly paid off for all of you that did draft him tonight. He was basically most of their offense. 19 targets for Darren Waller. 19 targets, 10 catches, 105 yards and a touchdown, 26.50 points PPR. We always talk PPR whenever we're referencing points, just so you're aware. We figured that most of you, that's the format that you play. So a real great night for Darren Waller. Potentially won you a lot of your matchups in this Monday night game. Derek Carr had a nice night, 435 yards, 2 touchdowns, 25 fantasy points for him. Kenyon Drake even threw in 12 fantasy points, a few targets, few catches there. Hunter Renfrow, 11 targets there, 6 catches for 70 yards, 13 fantasy points for Renfrow. Zay Jones 12-6, Bryan Edwards 12-1. So a few people in play there for the Raiders. Not a bad night overall. On the Baltimore side of things, we weren't too sure what was about to happen, especially with the issues that Baltimore has had in the backfield there. But Tyson Williams did have a nice night, 18.40 fantasy points. He had 9 rushes. Latavius actually had one more than him, 10, and had a touchdown. Latavius Murray, 8.8. I have a feeling Latavius has a good future in this backfield once he gets worked in here. I don't know if they will continue to stick with Williams over Murray, if it will be some sort of a timeshare or whatnot. But either way, Williams, 65 yards and a touchdown, 3 catches for 29 yards, 18.4. So a nice night there if you went with Williams after losing out on potentially Gus Edwards starting the season there for Baltimore. Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, a nice night receiving. 6 targets, caught all 6 of them for 69 yards and a touchdown, 19.40 fantasy points. And then Sammy Watkins, new to the Ravens this year, 9 targets, 5 catches, 117 yards, 16.7. So some decent players in this matchup. Of course, overtime always helps when you're talking about fantasy points. So that actually helped to pad the stats quite a bit, I'm sure. But still was a nice night there. And I'm looking to see, I do believe that Josh Jacobs may have cracked the top 10. No, just outside the top 10, 18 for running backs. Kamara was 10th with 18.10 fantasy points. I don't believe anybody else from this. Darren Waller, of course, second place, just behind Rob Gronkowski in terms of tight ends overall for week 1. So that was tonight's Monday night game. An exciting game to watch football-wise, a relevant game fantasy-wise. We know that some of you probably had matchups on the line either way tonight and either won or got those matchups taken away from you based on some of those big scoring games, with still a nice Monday night game either way. All right, let's go through the weekend's games. We will go through each game one by one, with the exception of the Thursday game. We've already, most of you probably already heard about that so far, but we will go through all the weekend games, and take a look at all of the fantasy relevant stats from each of those games and break them down as we look forward to week 2. So let's go ahead and get to the first game on the Monday post-game show, and that first recap is going to be Arizona at Tennessee. An interesting game here from the standpoint of this did not turn out to be as close of a game as many thought that it would be. Arizona, the big win, 38-13. Obviously, this was a Tennessee home game. Just not a great day overall for the Titans. In week 1, sometimes we see some weird reactions from time to time from different teams, and you kind of chalk it up to that might be the case here. But anyways, as you look at the stats, a great game from Kyler Murray, 299 yards, 4 touchdowns, added the touchdown on the ground with 20 yards. Of course, Kyler Murray known for his ground game that is in addition to his passing game. So if you drafted Kyler Murray high, a nice quick start for him. Big games from DeAndre Hopkins and Christian Kirk. As you look at the screen, the players that have the carrots next to their name, those are players that are currently rostered in less than 50% of all leagues. So not only do we look at the stats, but we also are looking at potential players. And I will say this, that a few of our graphics did not get the carrots on them, so we can always talk about those as we get there. But that was the idea here, is to let you guys know if you're looking for players on the waiver wire at the end of this first week, these are the indications there that we see. Obviously, Christian Kirk, 5 catches on his 5 targets, 70 yards, 2 touchdowns. Kirk has been a relevant player there in Arizona. It wasn't, we weren't too sure what was going to happen with the addition of A.J. Green. Not really relevant at all. 6 targets for Green, nothing to speak of. DeAndre Hopkins, of course, is great, and that's the reason why he's drafted so high every year. 83 yards, 2 touchdowns. He had 8 targets, 6 catches, 26.3. The rookie Rondale Moore, 5 targets for him. It's off to a reasonable start. He's available in a lot of leagues. Will remain to be seen how he continues to be used in that offense there. In the backfield, it was Chase Edmonds. He actually did not get quite as many rush attempts as James Conner, but he did see more of the pass-catching work, which actually added to his day, 14.90 his total. 66 yards rushing, 4 catches for 43 yards there as well. Nothing to really speak of on the tight end side of things. On the Tennessee side of things, a rough day for Ryan Tannehill. Did have a touchdown, passing and rushing. Also a rough day for Derrick Henry. Certainly not up to his expectations. 60 yards on the ground, did have 3 catches. Julio really didn't get involved in the offense all that much. He did have 7 targets, but really nothing to speak of there. And A.J. Brown did have a touchdown that kind of saved his day to at least eke out a 14.9. But really not a great day for Tennessee at all, and certainly at home, not what you might have expected out of them. So we will see how they bounce back in week 2. Taking a look at the next game on our rundown, it's Jacksonville at Houston. Surprise win for the Houston Texans here. I don't know who expected them. Neither one of these teams are probably looking to be all that great this year. Houston 37-21 in this game. I think what to take from this game is the pass offense for Jacksonville under Urban Meyer could be stout this year. I feel like there may be a very involved passing game, which is not to the benefit of James Robinson, which I wasn't happy to see after I know that I rostered Robinson in a few leagues after Travis Etienne was lost with that injury. I'm sure a lot of you did the same. And so that is going to be a little bit of a concern going forward, especially if the game scripts work against Jacksonville. If you're losing to Houston, I don't know who you're beating at this point. So not a good sign there for Jacksonville in terms of what Robinson's day looked like. Only 5 rush attempts, 25 yards. He did have 7 targets, but 8.4, not cutting it for where you expected based on where you drafted him. Carlos Hyde did get a little bit of work, but it wasn't necessarily Hyde's work that cut into Robinson's day. It was more the style of play that Jacksonville was forced to go to. Trevor Lawrence, 53 passes in the game, 332 yards, 3 touchdowns, did have 3 picks, 22.08 his total. A decent day for Trevor Lawrence. We expect him to do well this year, and so this may just be the start. Certainly, if they're going to have to pass the ball a lot, I would think this is going to look a lot like what it looked like last year in Joe Burrow's rookie season before he got hurt for the Cincinnati Bengals. Nonetheless, we did see some interesting developments in terms of the receivers there. That might be something to look for as we go into the second week here. Marvin Jones led the way, 18.7. Certainly a player that wasn't necessarily – it was hard to say. We didn't know who was going to shake out to be the main guy out of the 3 that we thought there between Jones, Chark, and Shenault. DJ Chark did have the most targets with 12. And interestingly, the second most targets on the team was actually James O'Shaughnessy, the tight end, which to me kind of says something there. I don't know that he was on anybody's radar. Wouldn't say that he was on mine, but he is now. I think he's going to be a player that's going to be available on the waiver wire this week, probably without having to use your priority to get him. And if the offense there continues to function this way throughout the season, you might be able to find some value there out of O'Shaughnessy. I know that I'm considering putting some work in to try to get him in a couple of spots right now myself. I'm not a person that really drafted tight ends early in most of the leagues. So that spot is difficult throughout the season. So O'Shaughnessy, a player to keep an eye on. And obviously there are players on the Jacksonville team that may still be available to you as well. And based on what you see on the Houston side of things, there's certainly a lot of players available over there. It doesn't necessarily mean that anybody's looking to pick any of them up. But it was Mark Ingram who had the biggest day, I would say, for Houston. 26 rush attempts, 85 yards and a touchdown. Ingram's production probably takes a dip when they are not winning, which is most likely going to be most every game they play this year. So we'll look to see what happens there. But as far as everybody else, nobody else really stood out all that much. David Johnson, really not a lot to speak of. Only 3 rushes. Did have some targets, but if you were waiting for David Johnson to kind of return to that role, it doesn't look like that's where we can expect him to go. All right, I do see a chat here, so I'm going to go ahead and jump over that chat. Let me just get out of this stuff here appropriately. I got a few more clicks going this time. That's not what I meant to put on the screen, but that's okay. We're live. Still got to work through some of these things a little bit. Let's take a look at the chat we've got here. This is from Fabian Vasquez. I do believe you've been with us before, so welcome back. If I'm losing my mind and this is your first time here, and then welcome either way. But glad to have you on the stream tonight. And you ask, Herbert or Hurts Dynasty League. This is, if you're looking for a steadfast answer to this, I can't say that either one of these guys is a no. I'm going to say either one of these guys I think has a great future. in Dynasty. The difference between the two is obviously Jalen Hurts has that floor because of his rush game involvement. And I like both of these guys. These are guys that I drafted in a bunch of spots this year in my own leagues. I think you're in line for a very good future from both of them. I think the Chargers are going to be an improved team this year. We did see a nice passing output for the Chargers. We will go through I'll actually go through their game next, since we're talking about these two players for you, Fabian. And then Jalen Hurts, also a nice game for Philadelphia as well. I think of the two teams, I think LA is going to be the better team this year. That doesn't mean that Hurts won't have the better year from fantasy purposes, because if you want to combine the fact that he's got that run game output with the fact that they're probably going to trail in a lot of games and be forced to throw the ball as well, you got a nice combination there for fantasy points. And I think you see some of their players like Devante Smith had a nice game, the rookie there. So I do think that there is some good production to be had from both of these guys. I can't say that there's any reason to think that one of them would be more preferred than the other. If there's, that's not, I know if you're looking for a one or the other answer, I don't know that's the way I see either one of these two guys. I think they're both great assets. I think if you can get either one of them, you're in good shape. If for some reason you have both, even better. But in Dynasty, I think these two guys are going to be good players for a long time. I probably would say, the way it's been going with the quarterbacks that are more active in the run game, I think the value for them is probably just a little bit higher. You look at guys like Kyler Murray, Josh Allen. I think in fantasy there's a little bit of an advantage to be gained there because if they perhaps have a bad day passing, you're going to have a safer floor because of the involvement in the run game. So if I had to pick between the two, I would probably say the Hurts. But like I said, I don't think either one of them is in bad shape. And I see a follow up here, and you say, should I drop Rodgers for Hurts? I wouldn't. I don't think that this week is a good indication of what's going to happen with Green Bay. So I would say no to dropping Rodgers for Hurts. But if you're in a situation where you have a chance to get Hurts, like if he's available on a waiver wire, I would certainly consider looking else if you're talking Dynasty, because you're not talking about something for strictly this year. If that's the case, I would look to see if there's somebody else that you could possibly drop, and then you have few good choices, and perhaps you can work out a trade somewhere that gets you some better value back for Rodgers than just losing him altogether. I think Rodgers is going to be fine this year. You got to remember his preseason was not, there certainly wasn't a whole lot of preparation going on there other than preparing to play for another team, I guess you would say. So I think Rodgers is going to be just fine. I would not drop him. I think he's going to have a stellar season, as I've got him in a couple of places. So I also hope he has a stellar season. But I think if you're thinking about picking up Hurts, I don't think it's a bad idea at all. And I think you're going to have some trade options available to you from that point that you can decide on later in the season that might help you on down the road. So that would be what I would think. I would hate to see you lose a guy like Aaron Rodgers and then have him start putting up a great year, and then one of your opponents picks him up and ends up, making you pay for that. So I wouldn't want to lose Rodgers at all. But if you have somebody else on that roster that you can cut, I think it's a reasonable thought. Thank you for the question, Fabian. Again, I do believe you are a return viewer, so glad to have you back on the stream and look forward to seeing you again. If you're not new, or if you're not a return viewer and I'm losing my mind, then it's good to have you on the stream either way. I will put up the notification just in general here to let you know that even if we are talking other content tonight, as Fabian did, feel free to drop a chat with your question anytime. And as soon as I see those little alerts light up, I'll go ahead and get to those chats right away during the rest of our content. The live chat will remain open, and we will be able to answer your questions all show long. All right, so let's go ahead and rather than just going strictly in the order that I had originally planned for with these games, I hope that I don't make myself completely lose my place by doing this. But since we just talked about these other two players, I'm going to go ahead and jump down to the Chargers game and review that one next. So this was at Washington. Obviously, we saw the injury, unfortunately, to Ryan Fitzpatrick. I know that I had big thoughts for the Washington football team this year, especially for Terry McLaurin. It'll be interesting to see how that works out for McLaurin without Fitzpatrick there. I think it would have been a big benefit to him throughout the season. But taking a look at the Los Angeles side of things, obviously Washington has a tougher defense. So, Herbert, I know that I sat him, and I actually sat him for Hurts in a couple of leagues. Interestingly, it seems like the Hurts-Herbert thing is kind of like a the two guys that seem to fall in the same area in terms of whether or not you're sticking with either one of them. So it is very interesting. Anyways, he did have 337 through the air, a touchdown. Just didn't have as many touchdowns to go with it, 14-3-8, a total that's probably one of the lower totals he's had if you look back through last season. Again, a tough defense in Washington. I think there will be better days there. His receivers still put up good stats. Mike Williams and Keenan Allen. Williams had the best day, 12 targets, 12 targets and 14 for Keenan Allen. So a lot of involvement from both of them. 22-2 for Williams and 19 for Keenan Allen. Austin Eckler had a hamstring issue and was able to gut through the day. Did have a touchdown, 11-7 there. And a player that I thought was interesting there is Jared Cook at the tight end spot. I was interested to see how he was going to work out there with Hunter Henry no longer there. Possibility that Jared Cook remains involved as the season goes through there. So something to keep an eye on if you're looking for tight ends to stream throughout the year. Potentially he's somebody that you can look at. On the Washington side of things, no real great days for anybody. Logan Thomas had a touchdown, kind of saved his day. 30 yards, 3 catches on 3 targets. Scary Terry, only 5 targets, did have 62 yards. Taylor Heineke was the player that had the most stats. Obviously, he came in for Fitzpatrick. And Antonio Gibson, I think, will still be fine, even though Fitzpatrick is not there. But I think, obviously, this is a little bit of a downgrade going forward for McLaurin and also Thomas, which is unfortunate. Those are 2 players that I really liked a lot in drafts this year. So we will see how that shakes out there. All right, and I see a couple of other chats, so let me back out of here and let me jump over to the chat section, and let's go ahead and hear from MB. Thank you for the chat, MB. Welcome to the stream. You say, I'm 10th on the waiver. Should I just try to get the Cards defense? I would say this. First of all, if you're 10th on the waiver, I'm assuming it's a 10-team league. Congratulations on Christian McCaffrey as the #1 draft pick, assuming that that's how your waivers work, is that it's based on your draft position. So if that's the case, then certainly being 10th is a spot that a lot of us would love to be in. It's a great start there. In terms of picking up a defense, my suggestion would be don't use your waiver preference or waiver priority to get that defense unless you absolutely don't have the ability to go and pick them up once waivers clear. It's most likely the defenses are still going to be there. I'm looking to see who Arizona plays on my grids here. They are playing Minnesota this week. There are certainly some other teams out there who are streaming options if you don't get Arizona this week. I think not Miami. New England is a good streaming option playing against the Jets. Green Bay is a team that I picked up as a streaming defense last week to prepare for week 2. They have Detroit this week. So there are some other decent streaming offenses that are out there that most likely are available in your leagues. Again, my grids are over here in front of me, so I'm just checking to see as I have the game layout on for each of these teams. Cleveland, probably not available. Cleveland has Houston this week. Just looking to see who else has really good matchups available. Denver, probably not. Denver might be available in some leagues. I guess it would be better if I actually looked at the numbers. I don't have those numbers in front of me. But Denver plays Jacksonville. San Fran is not probably available. I don't see a lot of other ones that are really standing out in terms of good opportunities there. But again, what I would do is I would take advantage of this week because usually most teams are going to be very active on the waiver wire in week 1. So if you have 10 and you can wait it out and don't use your priority on that defense and then just go ahead and pick up that defense after waivers clear, you're going to bump up your spot for next week. And then if something happens where there's a player that's really lucrative, you'll have a better chance to get them based on that priority moving up. So that'd be my suggestion in terms of trying to get the best of both worlds there. You'll probably still be able to get that defense that you want, and then hopefully you can get that number up there a little higher so that you can have better chances in future weeks. Hope that works out for your MB. Either way, as I always say, I hope your players crush it for you, and thank you for the chat. Next up, we got Not Tom with a question here. Tannehill and Ridley for Mike Williams, Lawrence, and Julio. I'd be receiving Ridley and Tannehill full PPR. This is obviously a trade. It looks like I'm not sure if you are offering the trade or if you have had it offered to you, but you would be receiving Ridley and Tannehill, and you would be giving up Mike Williams, Trevor Lawrence, and Julio. Well, looking at it one by one, I think Lawrence for Tannehill should be an upgrade. Tannehill obviously had a rough week 1. I wouldn't expect that to be the way the whole season goes. So this might be a good opportunity. Calvin Ridley, who was drafted high, did not have as great of a first week as many would have hoped. which might make him available in this trade to you. Mike Williams had a great week. He's certainly not going to put up those stats every week because he's not the main guy there in LA. And Julio is, who knows? It's a question mark for Julio and how he works into that offense there. I don't think Julio is surpassing A.J. Brown by any means in that offense. I think A.J. Brown is going to be the main guy still there. And clearly they haven't worked things out yet between how that's all going to work out. Do I like your prospect if you're getting Ridley and Tannehill? Yes, I do. I think Calvin Ridley, to me, and I talked about it on the Sunday pregame show, is, I think, pushing the very top of receivers this year. And that's, I should say, provided that Matt Ryan has a little better play than he did in week one. Matt Ryan without Julio in the past has had his struggles. But last year, when you looked at the target share in games that Julio played and games that Julio didn't play for Ridley, he was almost 5 targets more per game when Julio was not there. It was up around 11. And I don't think I'm sure Kyle Pitts will get some of those targets, but I don't think it's going to impact him all that much. I think Calvin Ridley is going to be in a real good spot to have a really nice season this year. So I certainly would like getting him on your team. I think he's going to be a better player for you than Julio by far. I think he's going to be a better player for you than Mike Williams by far. So I think if you're getting Tannehill and Ridley, you are getting the better players in that deal. And if that's the way you're looking at trade, if your side, if you get the better players, it's your advantage. That's the way I would look at that one. All that you're really losing here is depth, because you have 2 potential receivers, and now you're only getting 1 back. So if you have enough other receivers to continue to have what you need throughout the season, then yes, I like this deal. I think it benefits your team. And I think that Tannehill at worst should be an even swap for Lawrence. At best, he should have better production throughout the course of the year. Not that Trevor Lawrence can't have a good year, but I think Tannehill has been a good player and has already proven himself. So, yes, I like your side of the trade, and I think this is a good deal for you. And so, yes, if we're able to get it, let us know how that works out for you. And as I always say, that either way it works out, I hope that your players crush it for you. But not Tom. I do like that deal quite a bit. And let me see another question here from Fabian Vasquez. Also, my dynasty league is a 2-quarterback league, and I have Herbert and Rodgers. Should I trade? I think that right now, if you're looking to trade Rodgers away, I don't think you're going to get that much value from him right now until he has better weeks. And so if you are considering picking up Hurts for that 2 QB league, I absolutely love that, especially if it's dynasty. So I guess my only question here, and perhaps you can let me know, fill me in as a response in the chat here, is Jalen Hurts available on your waiver wire in that league? If he is, then I think you got to spend that priority to get him, man. I think that because it's going to offer you the opportunity to make that trade later on. And without knowing what exactly you have on that waiver wire, I would, and I've seen this happen, and I've probably done this in leagues many times myself. If you don't have one of those stout defenses, if you're like streaming defenses every week, cut your defense, cut your kicker. You'll figure it out later. Like you'll pick up a guy on Saturday or on Sunday that's going to fill that spot, and that gives you some time to see, is there somebody out there to make a deal with? What can you do? Is there somebody that happens to go on IR? If you have IR spots available, it might open up a spot. Do what you have to do if Jalen Hurts is available on that waiver wire to get him. I would not let somebody else get him in Dynasty. I hesitate to say to cut Rodgers because I think he still has value, but in terms of Dynasty value, you got many more years out of Jalen Hurts than you're, obviously not saying that Aaron Rodgers can't play for a long time, but Jalen Hurts is in his 2nd year and Justin Herbert's in his 2nd year. If you have those 2 players in Dynasty, you have set yourself up nicely for the future to where you can feel good about your quarterbacks and focus on the rest of your team moving forward. So I think that I don't know if I want to trade Aaron Rodgers right now because I don't think you're going to get adequate value because of having such a bad first game, but I think you're going to get better value. So yeah, if you can get Hurts, and if what you're saying is that he's available on the waiver wire, I would try to figure out some way to work around, cut a defense, cut a kicker, and then you'll figure it out later. Because like 1 week of a defense problem or 1 week of a kicker problem is nothing compared to the amount of hopefully years that Jalen Hurts could be productive for your team. So yeah, and in that aspect, I guess you could. does make the thought a little bit more about, just simply cutting Rodgers for Hurts. But I don't think that's the most value. I think you're going to be able to get more value for your team by somehow keeping him somewhere down the road and seeing how that works out. Either way, let us know, Fabian, on how that works out for you. I'd love to hear back from you guys on how some of these deals work out as the weeks move on, and hope that you're able to, kind of crush that super flex with both of those guys, or whatever guys you end up going with. Not Tom says, great input. Thanks, man. Just subscribes as well. I say thank you very much for that. And it gives me an opportunity to say that the likes and the subscribes, they do help out the channel a ton. So if you enjoy our content, please feel free to drop us a like or subscribe to the channel. And also, we are still moving towards our first goal of 100 subscribers. We're up in the 70s right now. So that's obviously something that helps us out a whole lot, but also want to make sure that you guys are able to get notifications, whenever we have new content. It's the beginning of a new season. So glad to have you, Not Tom, and look forward to seeing you on future streams. And I will get your next question here. Thoughts on Callaway after a poor week 1 performance? I think that Marquez Callaway is one of those players that you drafted as what I call a flyer. I know in drafts, I like to talk about sleepers and flyers, and they're not the same to me. To me, sleepers are guys that you kind of know what their production is, and they're being drafted lower than they should be. A flyer is somebody like a Callaway, like a Devante Smith, guys that are not proven yet. You can get them in later rounds, and if they work out, then great. They might be a league winner, like a guy like Antonio Gibson was last year. Or some players that I've liked this year were, like I said, Devante Smith, Michael Carter from the Jets, who I still think is someone to hold on to. And if they, you got them in a later round, if they happen to have a great year, either they're really good for your team or they give you some trade value. My thought on Callaway is this. Let me take a look at his stats, because I do have his prepared, and we haven't gotten to his game yet. But I know that his stats were not all that great. So let me just pull those up on my other screen so I can have those to reference as we talk about this as soon as I find their game, Green Bay, New Orleans. So Callaway, of course, I have this, and his stats are right where the page is broken. And there it is. Only 2 targets, 1 catch for 14 yards. The deal in New Orleans is going to be weird until Michael Thomas is back. Who knows how that's going to shake out? Like, Juan Johnson had a great day from fantasy point purposes, but it was only 3 targets. And Jameis Winston had a huge day because of his 5 touchdowns, but he only had 148 yards passing. So how predictable is that offense going to be? I'm not sure. None of those wide receivers, none of those players that are involved right now seem to stand out as a guy that you're going to count on from week to week. If it was me, it's only week 1. If I had nobody else that I felt comfortable cutting, and there's somebody that you absolutely want on the waiver wire, like perhaps you're going to go for Elijah Mitchell from the 49ers, who a lot of players are going to go for this week, I think you can probably cut Callaway if you have to, with the understanding that once Michael Thomas comes back, what is he going to still be? I mean, you're talking about 6 weeks. They have an early bye, the Saints do. So there's a good chance that Callaway, does he hit? Possibly, but again, he's one of those players who, when you draft him, it's like if they hit, then great. But if they don't, you cut them and move on. And because you're going to be able to improve your team other ways. So there are players out there who are available right now who have put up production in week 1. Can you wait on him? Probably. If you have somebody else that you feel more comfortable cutting, or if you want to cut a defense or a kicker and work it out later or something like that, then that's a possibility. But does he have to be on your team in week 2 anymore? Probably not. A lot of these guys in the preseason, when they have big games, it doesn't necessarily mean that they pan out right away. He could be a great player down the line. But again, I don't know how you're going to trust. I mean, looking at the guys that are on their list, Deontay Harris, Chris Hogan, Marquez Callaway, like, how do you know which of these players from one week to the other? I mean, Juwan Johnson, Adam Troutman, this is just, it's like that offense is Alvin Kamara, and that's about it right now until Michael Thomas comes back. The good news is when Michael Thomas comes back, if you picked him up in the drafts, there's a good chance that he's going to have a lot of work in that offense. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. But yeah, we'll see with Callaway. But if you're thinking about possibly cutting him, I would say if you don't have anybody that's better, I don't think it's going to be the worst. There's a good chance that he's not probably going to be picked up off your waiver wire if you did cut him. And so if something did happen and he had a big week in week 2, he might be back out there again to go and re-grab. and you say that you just popped in and said, I got Michael Thomas on my IR. I did that in a couple of leagues as well. Strangely enough, I actually was drafting one of my leagues that does a live draft, but also offered an online draft this year as well. So I had the video chat open on the screen, and I had muted my mic, which is great because it was later round, and I out loud, because when you're drafting online, it's not like in a live draft, you got to watch what you say, but in an online draft, I just kind of forgot that I actually had like a screen up where people might be seeing me, but fortunately I had muted because it was getting towards my pick, and I said out loud just instinctively, wow, I wonder if Michael Thomas, is anyone going to take him or is going to get to me, because it was the round where I wanted him. And then I was like, oh no, I hope nobody just heard that. And luckily they didn't, and I ended up getting him in that round. So yeah, he has the potential to really boost somebody's team that if you're paying attention. So it's good, not Tom, that you were able to do that. I think again, it's only 6 weeks. They have their bye. I think it's week 7. I don't have that on my grids. But you're talking about a long season this year. So it's possible if you can get your way through that he's going to benefit your team. Good luck to you, not Tom. Appreciate hearing from you. And again, jump back in with us future weeks and let us know how it's going. Back to MB. My team is Kyler, Dalvin, Mike, D. Hopkins, Mike ATL. I'm not sure if I'm help me out with who you're talking about there. You're talking about Mike Davis, the running back for Atlanta? I might be losing my mind. It's a really late live stream tonight. Kareem Hunt, Julio, and Goddard with the Chiefs defense. Benches Latavius. I've got him in a few benches. Connor Mooney, Tony Jones, and Michael Pittman. Interestingly, speaking of New Orleans and Tony Jones, 11 rush attempts for Jones in that game, 50 yards rushing. Interesting there for New Orleans. That said, I'm moving on to the next part of your. That said, would saving waiver priority be worth it after that terrible defensive weekend? Yeah, I think that, because what you got to look at here is what you're saving here is not the number 10. You're saving, if 6. Let's say half of your league, it's a 10-team league. Let's say half of your league says, oh, I got to get this guy. You're going from 10 to 5 in week 2. I don't think that you're going to be – if you miss out on D for 1 week, then you can absolutely get a defense in week 3 or in week 4. I mean, you're going to be able to stream these defenses all week long. To me, the waiver priority is way more valuable than 1 week of defense. I'm taking a look here at what you said. Your Chiefs defense, and the Chiefs, I'm looking at their next few games here. So where are they on my grids? Baltimore this week, then the Chargers, then Philadelphia. Baltimore with the running back issues there, potentially a middling offense at this point. The Chargers, pretty good. Philadelphia, probably not going to be that great. It's hard to say. Like, I personally, if it was me, I would keep that priority right now and let that build up. I know I've had a similar decision in some of my leagues already where I decided to wait. I actually have a couple leagues where I have a very high priority and considered waiting instead of the guy up right now is Mitchell for San Francisco. I think that if you're going to go and get, I do have all the waiver wires players that I have listed here. I don't think this is necessarily going to be the most active week on the waiver wire. I don't think there's a ton of players where people are going to be like, oh, I got to get this guy. But I do think there are guys out there that are going to be scooped up. I think Christian Kirk for Arizona is going to get scooped up. I think the players that are really looking into things, Jalen Reagor might be a player that might not go on a waiver, but you might be able to get for free afterwards because he might be flying under the radar a little bit. I know I talked a little bit about James O'Shaughnessy from Jacksonville. If you're looking for a tight end, I think he's going to fly under the radar, and you'll probably be able to get him for free. But guys that are probably going to go off the waiver wire, a guy like and again, when I talk about waiver wire, I look at players that are currently rostered under 50%. Certainly in specific leagues, there might be other players than the ones I'm mentioning. But Cole Beasley from Buffalo currently at 45%, 13 targets for Beasley. He didn't have a great day. The Bills at all didn't have a great day, but you're talking about a receiver getting 13 targets. If you're playing PPR, that's pretty huge. He's seen that kind of production right along. I think Emanuel Sanders had a better day in terms of more activity than I expected with 8 targets there. There are other guys. Juan Johnson for New Orleans is going to be a player that probably people will use their waiver priority on. I don't necessarily think it's worthy on him because I don't think the production wasn't there. Yes, he had a big day because he had 2 touchdowns. He only had 21 yards receiving. He only had 3 targets. O'Shaughnessy had 8 targets for Jacksonville. He didn't have as big a day because he didn't have a touchdown. But if he's more involved in the offense, he's more predictable from week to week. So the waiver wire is always interesting, but the priority to me is also very important. So, yeah, I like waiting and keeping that priority and understanding that if you're concerned about your defense and you aren't able to get that defense that you want for week 2, what I like to do with defenses is I like to look and play for the following week. In other words, in this past week, in one of my leagues I had Indies D, I went ahead and picked up Green Bay's defense for week 2 before this weekend's games even started, because in week 2, Green Bay plays Detroit, and I figured Detroit's not going to be very good. I like to work that way because that way if you can keep it going that way for the entire season, you almost never have to use your waiver priority on a defense if you're always playing a week ahead. Use your IR spots wisely so that you have that extra spot if you need it. It doesn't always work out where you can continue doing that because sometimes it catches up to you and you just have to go the other way. But that's the way I always like to look at it. So, yes, would I sacrifice 1 week to keep that priority and let it bump up, considering that your 10 might be a 5 next week instead? Then, yeah, I would, and then reevaluate, because next week, then if your 5 becomes a 2, now you're in really good shape, especially in a week, like I said, where there aren't a lot of standout players on the waiver wire this week. There could be a lot more next week. So, yeah, I like keeping that priority. And I do see your follow-ups here where you said that Atlanta was the running back. That's who I thought you were talking about there, Mike Davis. I had Mike Davis in a couple of leagues. I had a decision with him between Davis and Gaskin this week. And I ended up choosing Davis, but I was really torn. I like Gaskin a lot. I liked Davis last year. I'm not sure how that's going to work out in Atlanta. It wasn't a very good game for Atlanta. But we'll see what happens there. Either way, MB, thank you for the chats. As I always say, I hope those players, I hope they crush it for you, whoever you end up going with there. And hopefully that you're off to a good 1-0 start either way. But if you're not, hopefully you can turn it around in week number 2. All right, let's put up the general notification. This is pinned in the chat for all of you as you're watching the stream. Just a reminder that the live chat is open. We are here for your fantasy football questions all show long. Even if we are talking other content, feel free to drop us a chat, and we will go ahead and get to those chats. Obviously, we have a lot of content, and we enjoy giving you that, but we would rather be talking with you than just talking to you. So if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask, and we will get to those as quickly as we can. In the meantime, let me remove this content, and let's get back to the week 1 recap. And I believe the next game up in line here is Minnesota and Cincinnati. So let's take a look at the stats from that game. This was obviously an interesting game for Cincinnati. Overtime win, 27-24. I think we saw some good things from the Bengals. I kind of expected some good prospects out of the Cincinnati wide receivers, and we did see that. Rookie Jamar Chase having a really nice game. That familiarity with Joe Burrow, of course, always helps. 7 targets, 5 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown, 20.9. I think if you got Jamar Chase, you probably got him a little bit, maybe midway through your draft, and hopefully he pans out as one of those flyers that we talked about, a rookie that really does hit. Joe Burrow, a decent day, 261 through the air, 2 touchdowns, 18-6 little. You'd like to see it a little bit over 20 there. But I think there's some good to be had for Burrow as he returns from injury. Great day for Joe Mixon, a player that I had a little bit of hesitation about. But it does look like he has some potential there now that no Gio Bernard. Samaje Perine did get some work. He did steal 8 rushes, but did not steal pass involvement like Bernard possibly has in the past. Mixon, 127 yards with a touchdown, also 4 catches on 4 targets. So that's going to help you in a PPR league as well. Not a great day for Tyler Boyd, but all of these receivers can't hit every week. So the fact that Chase and T. Higgins, who I also liked a lot, had very nice games there, bodes well for the future. You know, you'll see some of these guys kind of shift around from week to week. But I've liked the Cincinnati offense. I think that this is a pass game, a passing team all along, and Zach Taylor has kind of shown that that's what he wants it to be. Also, the probably game script's going to work out for them a lot where they're having to pass. This week they've got Chicago, then they got Pittsburgh and Jacksonville. So a couple of a little bit tougher defenses, as Chicago's not what they have been as much in past years. Pittsburgh is going to be tough. That game with Jacksonville in week 4 could be a shootout of young players for sure. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes there. On the Minnesota side of things, a great game for Adam Thielen. It was very interesting to me that I know with Justin Jefferson is the guy that is going to get most of the limelight in Minnesota. But does that mean that Adam Thielen can't be a very productive receiver for that team going forward? No, I don't think so. And I know that Thielen's production last year was a lot tied to his touchdowns. I think he had 14 last year. He's got 2 in week 1. So it's a very nice start. 10 targets. It's not like he just had, a couple of red zone targets that turned into touchdowns. He had 10 targets, 9 catches, 92 yards, 2 touchdowns, obviously a productive receiver, 30.2. A very nice day for Thielen. Jefferson a little bit lower, 12.5. Based on where you drafted him, you hope that he turns that around. He did have 9 targets, 71 yards. Didn't find the end zone, so that made a little bit of a difference there. Kirk Cousins had a decent day, 351, 2 touchdowns. And then Dalvin Cook, as always, he is a great player for Minnesota. 61 on the ground with a touchdown, 8 targets, and 43 yards through the air on those 6 catches. So I think that all of those players, if you've got them, I think you're in good shape on both of these teams moving forward. Minnesota, let's see who they play this week on my grids here, and they play Arizona this week. So that'll be interesting to see if they're able to put a better game against Arizona than Tennessee did. All right, I'm going to jump back over to, let's see what happens, because I don't think, if I put this chat over this screen, I don't know if it's going to cover everything. Not too bad. MB says 1-0 might use Kyler's trade bait. Kyler Murray, interesting thought there. 1-0 is good. It's a good start to the year. You always want to start that way. I know that I had some leagues that didn't go the way I wanted. Aaron Rodgers in a couple, and some not so good days there. So getting off that 1-0 is a good start. And just like they say in regular football, all you can do is win that one and then move on to the next one. So yeah, absolutely, MB. Hope for good things moving forward there. Let's take a look at the next game on our rundown in terms of the week recaps here, and it's Seattle and Indianapolis. So Seattle wins this game 28-16. If you saw the Sunday pregame show, I talked about I did the Believe and Beware list for the season. And apparently Russell Wilson and Tyler Lockett must have been watching, because I had them both on the Beware list, and they decided to go out there and just crush it. Who knows if that means it's going to be a season-long thing or not. It's very possible. It's not like, as I always say, fantasy football is all about opinions. And by no way do I believe that my opinion is the only one. Sometimes they work out, sometimes they don't. My worries about Tyler Lockett is that he was so boom or bust last year. He had a couple of those great weeks, and this would look like another one of those great weeks, but the ones that weren't great just cost you wins because it was non-existent. He had 10 games outside of the top 24, so not even an RB2. But nonetheless, Lockett, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, 26 fantasy points, a great day, only 5 targets. So again, this is where things go south with Lockett, because in this game he turned those 5 targets into a 26-point fantasy performance. In other games, when it's 5 targets and only 1 catch, it's a disappearing act. So I'm still a little bit worried about Lockett. And Russell Wilson had a nice game as well, 27-06, 4 touchdowns. Certainly no issues with Wilson there. DK Metcalf also was in there. Didn't have a huge game, but did have a touchdown, 60 yards. Chris Carson played decent, 91 yards on the ground, 3 catches for 26. So I think Carson is in line to continue to be the main guy there. I think you can continue to trust him moving forward. On the Indy side of things, we saw Carson Wentz returning from injury. I know I was a little bit concerned about what the pass game was going to look like there. And sure enough, the pass game did not have much to show for it. Zach Pascal was the leader there. Zach Pascal, a player who's available on your waiver wire. You will probably see priority used on that player moving forward. Pittman had 5.9. Paris Campbell was in there with not much of anything. T.Y. Hilton obviously is out right now. What you did see is Jonathan Taylor have a nice day, 56 on the ground, 8 targets, 6 catches, 60 yards, no touchdowns. If he added the touchdown, it would have been turned from a nice day to a great day. And Nyheim Hines also returning some value. He had 10 targets. So if you look at the overall targets between Taylor and Hines, that's 18. If I add up those top receivers that you see on the board, Pascal 5, Pittman 4, Campbell 3, That's only 12 targets between those guys right away. So you see what kind of happened with Carson Wentz, perhaps not pushing the ball to his receivers, kind of working his way back after possible injury problems. Jack Doyle did have 4 targets as well. We will see what happens with that offense as we move forward. Indy playing the Rams this week, a tougher defense. That might be a tough game for Indianapolis this week. So we will kind of see what they have to offer. Let me, I see a chat here from MB. Let me jump back over here and get you in here. Someone is ready to put Stafford over Rodgers. I want to snag Rodgers. I'm not sure what you mean there. If you're talking about like a trade offer that might be being made, I would say that Rodgers right now is definitely could fit into that buy low category. If people are concerned, there's going to be concern for certain players based on 1 week. I know Ezekiel Elliott is another guy that's out there that is going to be involved in a lot of early trades. If somebody is really like, and Zeke is a little different to me than some of the other players in terms of, are they off to a bad start? I'm going to play you this soundbite from Mike McCarthy on Zeke Elliott before we get to the next one. I thought this was very interesting this was after the Thursday game. I don't think it was in the post game, but it might have been the next day or one of the next couple of days. McCarthy talking about Zeke, and I found it really kind of strange the way he spoke about him. So let me play this clip. This is Mike McCarthy talking about Ezekiel Elliott.
I thought Zeke had a solid game. He did all the heavy lifting. He had some really hard looks in the run game. But his pass protection and I thought he didn't get the touches that you probably would like to. I think there's some extension in the pass game, or maybe there'd be more opportunities moving forward. But Zeke's a complete football player. I mean, I clearly understand the amount of success he had rushing the football early in his career, but he's a joy to work with. I love the way he goes about it. He's in great shape. He does all the little things. He has great understanding of the game. It's very instinctive, and so we just gotta give him some more touches.
I played that clip on Sunday as well, and I just find it strange the part of that clip about how Zeke had great rushing games like earlier in his career or in the past, or however he phrased that. That doesn't sound right to me. Like, I would expect a coach to kind of be out there and saying, boy, Zeke had a tough day. Tampa's got a good run defense, but we're going to get him more involved in the offense. He's going to be, a great player for us. That's not what I heard. I heard, he was great in the past. And he's involved in other facets of the game other than his just production. So from a fantasy standpoint, I don't have Zeke, but Zeke is a player that I know I've heard a lot of talk about going out there and trying to trade him, with teams that are unhappy or worried about his production. I'm not sure I feel that way. Zeke last year was, you thought that you could chalk up his struggles to the fact that Dak wasn't there and his injury issues, but not a great start this year either. So I'm a little bit worried about Zeke. We'll see how that shakes out, but I thought interesting comments. Let's get back to the recap. We'll move on to the next game, and that is going to be Pittsburgh and Buffalo. Taking a look at next. Again, for those of you guys that are watching on replay, I want to also talk to you as well. Aside from the chats that we have live here, we'd love to hear from you with your comments about any of these games or what you think. So feel free to jump in and drop us a comment. And also, I do want to let's do this real quick before we get on to the next game. I want to talk about this new game that we have called Six Picks. This is available for the standings to be kept all season long, where you're actually picking the winners each week. These are matchups that occur within the same games, fantasy matchups between individual players, where you can actually pick the winners and kind of follow that along. So it's a brand new game that we have. Keep an eye out for that. Just kind of an opportunity to show off your fantasy skills. A little bit of a fun game to play as the season goes on. 6 picks from the Fantasy Follow. Look for that out there. And again, thank you for being on our channel. And of course, I go over here and pop this thing back on the screen that I wasn't trying to. Doesn't make it. See it. Look and follow. Join us on the Fantasy Follow and watch Joe put stuff on the screen he doesn't mean to. But this is what happens. It's a live stream. Those of you that have been with us before, these things happen. And it's, hey, if you're not getting good information, you might even get a good laugh once in a while here from the show. So, but either way, like I said, if you do enjoy what you're doing or what we're doing here and enjoy our content, drop us a like, give us a subscribe. We do appreciate all that. It does help the channel out a lot. We still are a newer channel and still growing, so we're working towards that. So first real subscriber goal of 100, and we're getting into the 70s right now. So we look forward to moving towards that as the season goes on. Next game to take a look at here is Pittsburgh and Buffalo. As many of you know that are regulars here, I am up in Buffalo, so I am Bills Mafia, and this was, from real football purposes, disappointing 23-16 win for the Steelers. Just looked better than us in that first game. Hopefully it turns around in terms of real football. And, like I said, hopefully all your real football teams are doing well. Fantasy football is separate and different, and that's why we go through these stats. It was a tough day for Josh Allen. 51 passes and still only 17.2 in terms of production, just one touchdown through the air. Stephon Diggs had reasonably okay, a lot of involvement, 15 targets, 9 catches, didn't turn on a touchdown, 15.9. Cole Beasley, 13 targets. It's 28 between those two alone. So again, it looks like Buffalo is going to lean on the pass. Interesting that Zach Moss was a healthy scratch for this game. So we saw Devin Singletary and Matt Breida just kind of chip in there where he could. If you are a player that is rostering a Singletary or a Moss, if this is a trend that continues where either of these players are healthy scratches, it makes you feel a little bit better about using these guys because the Buffalo run game is not all that productive in terms of fantasy purposes right now. Singletary, 72 yards on the ground, 5 targets, nothing to speak of in terms of production there. So it'll be interesting how that continues to go. Pittsburgh's offense, man, a lot of people talked about how they wanted to run the ball. Last year the run game was terrible. Did this offense seem any different for those of you that watched the game than it was last year? Because I don't know that I felt like it was all that much different just because they had Najee Harris. Harris had 16 attempts for 45 yards, 5.9. You would have hoped for a better day out of him. When you look at what happened through the air, Roethlisberger put it up 33 times. Didn't probably have to as much this time, but only had 188 yards, 1 touchdown. Deontay Johnson seemed to be the target leader, which is kind of where I thought he would be again. 10 targets for Johnson. Did have a touchdown. Left that game for a little while with an injury. That's one of the concerns with Deontay Johnson is he seems to leave a lot of games with injuries and then seems to be able to get back sometimes as well. So it's just you hope that he's healthy, but a player like Chase Claypool, I can't remember him having those same issues where he's been leaving games. So if you're someone who rosters Chase Claypool and Johnson continues to be injury prone, I think you're going to be in good shape because Claypool is going to continue to be involved in that offense there. 6 targets for him, 45 yards, a 10-point fantasy day. Juju did have 8 targets, 9-2. And in terms of the run game, like I said, Harris did not really have much to speak of there. So I don't know if that run game, the offensive line is a concern there. I don't know what's happening or where that's going to go. We'll see what happens, but I don't imagine that Ben is going to approach things a whole lot different than he did last year. I just don't see him coming out and all of a sudden, trying to go big play passes all the time. I think it's going to be short gains, short passing game. And if you're a PPR player, someone like a Deontay Johnson, I think it's going to continue to have some nice value for you. You kind of just see how that goes. But I think I don't think you're going to have like games, a team that they're going to crush. It's not like when they used to have AB, that sort of thing. But I think you'll still get some decent production there. Next game up, San Fran and Detroit. This was an interesting one because we didn't know exactly what we're going to see from Detroit. And then we had some Shanahanigans going on. San Francisco wins this game 41-33. I have no idea what to make of this Trey Sermon thing and this Brandon Ayuk thing. Like reading reports and seeing what's going on, like this feels like somebody has made someone upset in the locker room, or they haven't been in line with the team and the way their philosophies are. It just doesn't seem like a production or an ability thing for either one of those guys. And I don't think they're going to tell you if that's what it is. But this feels like they're in the doghouse to me, if that's a way to put it, or they're somehow a slap on the wrist for perhaps not going about things the way the team wants to. So I don't know what to do with these guys. Now that Raheem Mostert is out for long term, I think I saw it was either 6 or 8 weeks that Mostert's going to be out. you pretty much have to go get Elijah Mitchell. He is the guy on the waiver wire this week. He's worth your priority. I would assume that he is going to be, he's not going to be around anywhere after waivers are cleared. The San Francisco run game to me is difficult to predict, but without Trey Sermon, of course you would expect Trey Sermon back and active, but I should say without Raheem Mostert, if it's Mitchell and Sermon, whatever's going on, you would kind of expect Mitchell to be at least 1A, to Sermon's 1B at this point. Mitchell had 19 rushes, 104 yards, and a touchdown in that game. Now, Detroit's run defense is terrible. Unless it's significantly improved from last year. It was terrible last year. It's probably not good. So, you might not have as great a day from San Francisco, but their run game is pretty good. They got Philadelphia next week. You expect them to be ahead, and game script favors them in that game. So, you think they're still going to run it. I wouldn't see that changing. In terms of their pass game, Deebo Samuel, to me, of course I can say this now because he put up 31-9. When we were going through the draft season, I never really quite thought that there was a huge separation. I didn't think Brandon Ayuk necessarily warranted being drafted that much farther ahead of Deebo. Ayuk played more last year as a rookie due to injuries, some of that having to do with Samuel. I always kind of felt like Samuel was at least at the same level as Ayuk, if not ahead of him in terms of the pecking order there. But yet he was drafted much lower in a lot of drafts this year. Nonetheless, 12 targets, 189 yards, and a touchdown. That's a pretty nice day. And I'm trying to remember if he was where he was in the top. Let's see where he was in the top players. I believe he was third amongst all wide receivers for week one, only behind Amari Cooper and Tyreek Hill. So that's a pretty big day from a run-first team. Trent Sherfield, another rookie, also was in the mix with a touchdown there, 10-3. George Kittle didn't have a huge day, but I think there are better days ahead for him. Let's see here. 9-8, 5 targets, 78 yards there. On the Detroit side of things, I know I was one of those players who didn't know what to expect from DeAndre Swift. I've liked DeAndre Swift's talent, but this year I've been a little bit worried about what's going to happen with that timeshare in the backfield. But when you look at it, Jamal Williams and DeAndre Swift essentially had the exact same day. And the fact that this is a team that likely is going to be playing from behind, if them playing from behind means that those two guys just simply are involved with more pass game activity, then great for those two. Absolutely, especially if you're in a PPR league. Williams had the better day by just a little, 24-9 to 24-4 in terms of points. Swift 11 rushes for 39, 11 targets, 65 yards and a touchdown. Williams 10 rushes for 53, had a rushing touchdown, 9 targets, 8 catches, 56 yards. So those are almost essentially the same day for both. When you look at their receivers, there weren't a lot of targets going around their receiver core other than tight end TJ Hawkinson, who a lot of people predicted was going to be hugely involved this year for them. It does look like it's going that way. 10 targets for Hawkinson. 23-7 was his production, 8 catches, 97 yards, and a touchdown. So if you went out there and took a chance on Hawkinson in terms of drafting that tight end and sacrificing one of those, first, fourth, fifth round type area to get that guy, he certainly could pay off. I think TJ Hawkinson has been a great player already. And the fact that Detroit does not have that many great players remaining in the pass game is only more opportunity for him. I could not tell you who I think is going to shake out to be their number one pass receiver in terms of wide receivers, other than it might just be their running backs. It's very possible. So if that's the case, you can feel good about Swift and Williams going forward out of the backfield. That might be the takeaway from this game. Again, Detroit next week is, let's see where they are. They're at Green Bay. So we'll see what happens in that game. Green Bay obviously coming off a bad week one. So we'll see where that goes. All right, we already did the LA Chargers game. That was next on my rundown, so let's skip that one, and we're going to go on to the Jets and the Carolina Panthers. Welcome back, Christian McCaffrey. Oh, my goodness, it's so good to have him back. And if you were able to get that number one draft pick in your league, congratulations, and enjoy watching Christian McCaffrey all year long. I know in one of my leagues I was lucky enough to get that, so that was great. Hopefully you were able to do the same thing. If you didn't and you're playing against him, then hopefully you're able to beat him. But I know that person that has him doesn't want that to happen. So we'll see what happens as the season goes on. But McCaffrey 27-7 in week 1. Again, this was a low-scoring game. 19-14 was the final score. Carolina wins this one at home. Again, McCaffrey, 21 rushes for 98 yards. 9 targets, caught all 9 for 89 yards. No touchdowns. 27-7 without a touchdown. Another typical Christian McCaffrey day. Some decent production out of the receivers there. DJ Moore, 8 targets, a nice day, 80 yards. Robbie Anderson, only 3 targets. Touchdown saved his day for 12-7. And Sam Darnold was reasonably okay in his first game for Carolina against, a revenge game against the Jets. I'm interested to see what Sam Darnold continues to do if he starts to get more comfortable with the offense there. On the Jets side of things, the big takeaway here was if you didn't know if Corey Davis was going to turn into a number 1 receiver and you took a chance on him in draft and with the potential that could happen, it looks like that might pay off for you. 26-7 in the first game for Corey Davis with Zach Wilson throwing the ball. That was 5 catches on 7 targets, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns. Certainly you got him later on. I know on the Sunday pregame show we had some questions about should start Davis over some other players. I might have been a little more hesitant, wanting to see what happens and see how it shakes out. Well, this is a good sign moving forward in terms of whether or not you can trust Corey Davis in future weeks. So, yeah, big game there. Not a lot from anybody else, really. We'll see how that continues to go. But certainly the one big takeaway there is that you might have a potential number 1 receiver that can return you some nice value if you took a chance on him. Philadelphia and Atlanta. This was a little bit of a weird game, especially on the Atlanta side. But Philadelphia, they won this one 32-6. Pretty much a stinker from the Falcons. We've seen that before. 7-3-6 for Matt Ryan. That's not good. If you have Calvin Ridley and you expect him to be a great player, which I do this year, you got to get a better day than that for Matt Ryan for that to happen. Ridley had 8 targets, 51 yards. Mike Davis, 10 points, 15 rushes, 6 targets as well. Nothing huge going on either side. Kyle Pitts, not really a lot to show for. 8 targets, just 31 yards. I know that there's been a lot of hype on Kyle Pitts this year. What my concern, again, these are things that saying them afterwards, it's a lot easier to say things afterwards when it hasn't been a huge game the first week. But I know last year I thought there was big things I had for Hayden Hurst as a tight end in that offense, and it didn't really pan out. So I'm wondering if it's going to pan out more for Pitts as the season goes along or not. Certainly he's a rookie, and these things can get better as the year goes on. So we will see. But I do think that of all the players there, you trust Calvin Ridley. I think that turns around. I think Matt Ryan has to start playing a little better than this. On the Philadelphia side of things, man, Jalen Hurts, I know we've talked about this already tonight some. I really think there's such potential there. We saw flashes last year already, and the whole postseason to work his way into this offense. 28-2-6 the first week, 264 through the air with 3 touchdowns, 57 yards on the ground. This is right along the lines of what we expect in terms of the ground game for Hurts. Miles Sanders was able to have a decent day, 74 on the ground, 4 catches, 39 yards there as well. And we saw Kenneth Gainwell, the rookie, also working his way there for 12-3. Did have a touchdown as well. Devante Smith, if you took a chance on him, looks like you're headed in the right direction here. 8 targets, 71 yards, and a touchdown. And even Jalen Reagor, his second year, 6 targets, caught all 6, 49 yards, also had a touchdown there as well. I think there are some good signs in Philadelphia. Again, you would expect Philadelphia to be trailing a lot of games, so the game script is going to favor them in terms of the pass game. Dallas Goedert, 14-2 in terms of the tight ends as well. Did have a touchdown. Zach Ertz, it looks like there was some worry about possible injury there, and sounds like it's not going to necessarily be an issue. So it's going to be a Goddard-Ertz thing. I don't know how much you can trust either one of them. I know that Zach Ertz was a player that didn't work out well for me last year, so I wasn't going back there again this year. But we'll see what happens there. I do think that Philadelphia is a team to watch. And next week, let's see who they play next week. I'm looking at my grids here. They got San Francisco, so a tougher defense next week. We'll see how that shakes out for them. All right. I got to take the graphic off before I fly that video back there. Welcome to live TV. All right. Let me see. I got some more chats here from Fabian Vasquez. When is the next live? We're still kind of working through scheduling for this year. Sunday pregame is our main show, and that's Sunday. We've moved that up. Last year we were doing that at 12 o'clock, and we've moved that up to have a little bit more time because as we get more viewers with more chats, we want to make sure that we have enough time for everybody. The actives and inactive lists, I do always try to feature those on the Sunday pregame, and those come out at 11:30. So that poses a little bit more of an issue with getting all that in line in terms of moving that time up. But that's what we're looking towards doing. In terms of these weekly shows, this is a schedule that's, I would say best bet is if you subscribe, click that notification bell so that you can find out when everything is scheduled to go. I know that tonight I was working towards a post-game show, and some of the graphics that I was building were kind of took me a little longer to get them built. But I do appreciate MB what you say about the layout being perfect, and I thank you for that, because actually that was what I was working on all night tonight during the game, was kind of preparing those graphics. It's a little bit of a new look from what we did last year. So hopefully, I'm glad that you like that, and hopefully that you guys are able to continue to, like I said, get that subscribe and get that notification bell so that you're able to get those notifications. I know that probably a lot of you, being that it's late here, like I said, in Buffalo, it's 3 o'clock here. So a lot of you are probably West Coast viewers. And I do appreciate you West Coast viewers as well. And I, like, when I did some of the mock drafts this year, I tried to do one at 7 o'clock East Coast and another one at 11 o'clock East Coast to kind of incorporate both, East and West Coast viewers. So that's something that I'm looking to do as well. I guess the best answer is Fabian. Either way, check back with us. Sunday pregame is the main show. But as far as the additional stuff that we do, there are some opportunities for some other things. And like I talked about, that 6 picks game, take a look for that as well. There's a lot of stuff that we're still a new channel. So, this is kind of the process, and we continue to work through that. But we do appreciate all you viewers, and I know a lot of you regulars that have been with us. We appreciate you as well. MB, you said he meant someone is selling Aaron Rodgers low. I might stack it. That's what I kind of thought that you meant. So yeah, I think that's very reasonable. Like, if what you're saying is you have Matthew Stafford and you think you can trade Stafford for Rodgers, I probably would make that trade if it was me. I think Rodgers is going to have more value. I think Stafford's going to be just fine this year as well. But he's with a new team, and Rodgers has been there, and there is a lot of potential there. So yeah, I think those opportunities are going to be out there. That's one of the great parts of fantasy football, is that it gets really interesting when you have these trade possibilities. So yeah, if you have the chance to get Aaron Rodgers on your team, I certainly think there's a reason to go ahead and try to make that deal. So I hope that works out for you there, MB. All right, let's go back and continue working through the rest of these games. Let's see, the next game up, we just talked about Philly. So the next game up is Cleveland and Kansas City. And we'll go through this game as soon as I get it on my other screen here. This was a little bit of an interesting game as well. Cleveland loses this one, 33-29 the final score. That was in Kansas City. A little bit of a scare for the Chiefs, but they are who they – what's the phrase? They are who we thought they were. And I guess they let them off the hook. So anytime you can get one of those quotes into the show, I think it helps out. I think it's a good day. So let's take a look at the stats here. On the Kansas City side, well, this guy named Patrick Mahomes, he's pretty good. 337 yards, 3 touchdowns, added a touchdown on the ground. Another big day there if you went ahead and drafted Mahomes, as the first quarterback off the board in your league. He paid off for you as he normally does. Tyrek Hill, the number 1 wide receiver for the year, or I'm sorry, he was number 2 this week, 37-10, only behind Amari Cooper. Same amount of targets as Cooper had, 16. So yeah, that's pretty good. When you're talking about the 2 main players for Kansas City are Hill and Travis Kelce, for them to both have such big days at the same time, I mean, that bodes well for having either one of them. If you've got a team where, you got 2 great players like that, and one has a great day and the other one doesn't, that makes it a little tougher. But I mean, Hill, 16 targets, 11 catches, 197 with a touchdown. Kelce, 7 targets, 6 catches, 76 yards, 2 touchdowns, 25-6. I mean, that's a really nice day for both of those guys. The guy that didn't really see as much was CEH. Again, a player that I think there was some concern over. I kind of feel the same way, because it just seems like when you have a team that's this good at passing the ball, why run it? And again, there are going to be some times where there are going to be games where the game script favors them a little bit more. But Clyde Edwards there, still 14 rushes, 43 yards, did have 4 targets, 3 catches, 29. 10-2, you'd like to get a little bit more than that from him if you could. But those are going to be the way some of these days are going to go. You're probably using CEH as an RB2. Probably not looking at him as in your RB1 like you did last year based on where he was drafted. So perhaps that makes him, a little more palatable as the year goes along. For Cleveland, this is to me, first of all, without Odell Beckham, it does change things. But I have never looked at Cleveland as the passing team. Like, to me, Cleveland is run first. I think Cleveland is a good team. I think they're good at what they do, and I think that's going to continue all year long. That's one of the reasons why I valued Nick Chubb so much in drafts this year. 22-1 for Chubb, 15 rushes, 83 yards, 2 touchdowns. Even with Kareem Hunt there, Chubb missed a lot of games last year and still had a great season. So if he's healthy the entire season in this run-first offense, I think Cleveland's going to be leading in a lot of games. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. As I look at my grids, Cleveland's got Houston this week. Houston's run defense has been awful last year. They're probably not going to be all that good this year. They could just be crushing them this week. So if you have Nick Chubb on your roster, you hope for that. Even if you have Kareem Hunt, you hope for the same thing. Hunt was 33 yards with a touchdown on the ground, 3 catches, 4 targets, 28 yards. Still a nice day there, 17-10. You'll take that in terms of Hunt, who you're probably playing as a flex player. In terms of your receivers, Jarvis Landry had a touchdown as a rushing touchdown, 5 targets, 5 catches, 71 yards. I did not look up to see the status on Landry, but I believe Landry got hurt in this game. So I'm not sure if his status moving forward, if he's still healthy or not. And it's not something I have in front of me right now, but it seems like I remember seeing that Landry had a little bit of health issues moving forward. So if that's the case, it might not be a week where they need to do much in the pass game. So if it's not something serious, then perhaps it's a good, not that there's ever a good time for someone to get injured. Certainly we don't want players to be injured. But perhaps at this point, you're going to just lean on that run game that's going to get you through. But Cleveland, I think, I think they're going to be a good team this year in the AFC. I expect them to win a lot of games. So we'll see what happens there, even though they didn't pull this one out. Next up on the order is, oh boy, this game was not what we expected at all. Green Bay with a stinker in this one. New Orleans 38-3 in this game. This was bad. Aaron Rodgers, 133 yards, 3.32. That is not what you were hoping for. Devontae Adams, 10-6 on 8 targets. Aaron Jones, nothing going on. When you're losing that badly, that's understandable. This was a bad one. They're not all going to be this way. They can't all be this way. But this was not a good way to start off your season, especially when you're wanting to get off to a nice 1-0 start in fantasy. And these players are very relevant: Adams, Jones, and to a lesser extent, Rodgers. New Orleans, we talked about this a little bit earlier. What a cast of characters here. It's Alvin Kamara and a bunch of everybody else's. When you include Jameis Winston in that, clearly 5 touchdowns, 29-6-2 is great. 14 for 20 for 148. I don't know how I feel about that moving forward. He's not going to, if he throws 5 touchdowns every week, then great. I'm guessing that's not going to be the way it's going to go. This could be interesting for the next few weeks without Michael Thomas until he's back. Kamara certainly seems like it bodes well for him. 20 rushes, 83 yards, touchdown through the air on 3 catches there. Tony Jones with the 8 rushes. I did not really watch this game so much, so I'm not sure if that Tony Jones was more in a mop-up duty there or if they were working him in throughout the game. I'm guessing that he got most of that towards the end of the game when there was no reason to bring Kamara back in. So it'll be interesting to see if he continues to have that involvement. It wasn't really very relevant fantasy. Deontay Harris, the wide receiver who got the most action there, 15-2, did have a touchdown, 72 yards, but again, only 2 targets. I don't know how you trust any of these players in your roster at all right now, other than Kamara. I can't imagine even trusting Winston as a streamer at this point. Like, I don't know. Like, New Orleans this week, let's see who they play. They have Carolina. It'll be an interesting game. Kamara and Christian McCaffrey on the same field, so that'll be a lot of fun to watch. That'll be a nice fantasy game to watch on the Sunday Ticket. I hope all you guys got to watch the free. I don't have any affiliation with Sunday Ticket by any means. Let me say that, but the fact that the first week is free preview on Sunday Ticket is pretty cool because there are a lot of other games aside from your favorite team that you want to kind of get a feel for what's going on for fantasy purposes. Like Jacksonville is one of them. Indianapolis was one of them. Because these are players that make an impact, like waiver wire type players down the road. So that's something that you absolutely have to take advantage of if you have that opportunity. And I know it's great to be able to watch all different games when fantasy is going on. Denver and the Giants. Boy, the Giants. I don't know. 27-13, Denver wins this one. I don't know what's going on with fantasy for the New York Football Giants. Daniel Jones had an okay day. Saquon Barkley did not do much and certainly was expected to be on a pitch count. They play again on Thursday. So if you're watching this before that Thursday game, obviously you might be thinking the same things that I am. Like, what is he going to do in that next game? We didn't see much out of Kenny Golladay, really. He did have 6 targets, but only 10-4. Sterling Shepard was the main guy there, 24-3. And that was 9 targets, 113 yards on 7 catches with a touchdown. Sterling Shepard's been a good productive player for that team in the past. Seems to be relatively consistent. Darius Slayton is the opposite of that, boomer bust. He had 9-5. Be interesting to see what happens there. On the Denver side of things, Bridgewater gets the start and has an okay day, 27. Melvin Gordon with that huge touchdown run really made a big difference in his production, 20.8, 101 yards on the ground. Did have 3 targets. Devante Williams, more rush attempts, 14. Only 1 target. Not a great day points-wise, 5-10. This is probably a split going forward. It's probably continuing to be a split, and perhaps later on in the season it changes around. But obviously Devante Williams was a popular pick in drafts and mostly was being drafted ahead of Gordon. I'm not sure when that's going to pay off, but it is something to watch. Noah Fant, 8 targets for 62 yards, had a decent day from the tight end spot. Something to watch here. I want to also say there was injuries. Might have been an injury with Jerry Jeudy in this game as well, so that might change things in terms of how things shake out from the wide receiver core. Again, I don't have that status in front of me, but I feel like, again, I'm just kind of going off memory that might have been the case here. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how a lot of these teams, this is the week 1, and it doesn't mean that in week 6 or week 8 it's still going to be going the same way. But we'll see how that shakes out there for both of these teams. Whether or not Barkley ends up working his way back in, you got to think he does. I think he's going to be just fine. But I know a lot of people are worried right now at this point. Miami and New England. This one, again, I'm up in Buffalo here, so New England games are not usually my first priority to watch. Miami wins this one 17-16. I have not been high on Tua Tagovailoa, and I don't think this performance did anything to change my mind on that. 17-1-8, 202 through the air with a touchdown. Did have a touchdown on the ground as well. Jalen Waddle played well. I was hesitant about him because of Tua. 6 targets, had a touchdown, 61 yards. Devontae Parker, welcome. Devontae Parker is one of the most frustrating players to me because you just never know when you can start him and feel confident in what he's going to do. 7 targets, 81 yards. Okay, didn't have a touchdown, but still an all right day. The player that I like the most in this Miami offense is Myles Gaskin. I like the fact that it seems that Miami likes to kind of go with a one back as much as possible, and it seems like Gaskin is their guy. Only 9 rushes in this game for 49 yards. Did also have 5 targets, 5 catches for 27, 12-6 total. To me, I feel like Gaskin is a player you can continue to trust going forward. So I do like Gaskin. On the New England side of things, obviously a rookie quarterback making his first start. 40 attempts for Mac Jones. Might be a little more than we might have expected. Did have a touchdown. James White was the running back leader. Damian Harris and James White, almost the same in terms of fantasy production there. Nelson Aguilar had a nice game in his first game with the Patriots. 7 targets, 5 catches, 72 yards, touchdown for 18-2. Jacoby Myers still had some involvement there. 9 targets, didn't have quite as good of a day. Jonnu Smith, 9-8, and also Hunter Henry was 6'10 in terms of tight ends. So we see how those new players are kind of working out for New England there. All right, and let me see. I do see one chat here, so I'm going to go ahead and get to that, Kevin. I have one more game to recap, but I'm going to go ahead and get to it. See, I did it again. Right? I put that, it is a new layout. I'm glad, MB, that you said nice things about like the new layout. I still got to figure out exactly what I'm doing when I'm making these switches from one thing to another, to not make myself look foolish by putting up something that really I didn't mean to on the screen. At any rate, Kevin Harrod, welcome to the stream. Thank you for the chat. What do you think about Dak for Evans and Tannehill? I guess my question is here, are you trading away Dak? Sounds like that's what you're saying, that you're trading away Dak and trying to pick up Evans and Tannehill. I'm a little bit concerned about Mike Evans. I was a little bit concerned about Mike Evans last year, and it worked out okay for him. My concern was when they brought in Antonio Brown. Now, Antonio Brown has had the offseason to work his way into the offense. Now, I know that earlier on one of the streams I was asked about Antonio and what did I think, and I didn't and don't necessarily think he's going to end up being like he might have been in the past. I felt like he was more of a spot starter. But when you look at these stats from the first games, it doesn't necessarily tell you that. 7 targets, 121 yards, and a touchdown. Evans still had 6 targets, but only 24 yards. Chris Godwin was the leader there, 14 targets, 9 catches, 105, and a touchdown. I'm not sure I would want to trade away Dak for, Tannehill's probably going to be fine, but Dak is probably going to give you more production because that offense in Dallas is going to be pass heavy. I feel like they're going to be losing a lot of games again this year, and they're going to have to throw the ball. And I don't know that's good for Zeke, but it's definitely good for Dak. So you're taking a downgrade for Tannehill. And the reason why, again, Kevin, tell me if you're looking at this the opposite way. It sounds like what you're saying is you're thinking about trading away Dak. But if you're looking at it the other way, that would change what I'm saying a little bit. I think if you have Dak right now, you have the better player of this trade. So a lot of players, when they look at trades, they like to look at who's getting the better player or the best player involved in this trade overall. And if that's the case, if you trade away Dak, the person that you are trading to is getting the best player in this deal. I'm going to guess that if you're trying to get Mike Evans, it's probably because you feel like you're weak at wide receiver. I don't know if Evans is the guy there. If you believe in Evans, then this is a week you've got to take a shot at him because he had a bad game and you might be able to get him. I have a little bit more concerns, and I have Mike Evans at least in one roster this year, and I've had him in the past. He's a player that I like, but I know I've heard a lot about them, talking about how, there could be some regression there. Last year I was a little bit worried, and he still was able to play well. So that makes me believe that this is just a one game. He's going to be fine. But at the same time, I don't know if you went out and you spent a high draft pick for Dak, you probably got him in the 4th, 5th round. That's a round where you could have gotten somebody else that would have helped your team. So you spent some good draft capital on this guy. He's going to have a good season most likely. I'll be surprised if he doesn't have a really good season for that team with all the weapons they have in the pass game and the fact that they're probably going to be forced to throw the ball playing from behind a whole lot. I think Dak's a player that you want on your team. So it would worry me in this trade if you're losing the better player. Perhaps there's a different trade without knowing your entire roster, but perhaps there's a different trade out there that gets you what you're looking for if you are looking for bolstering your wide receiver core without having to give up Dak. But when I look at trades, I usually like to look at, I don't want to try to think about who wins the trade. I want to think about, did they improve my team? And I don't know that losing Dak here, I don't know if Tannehill has enough of a level close enough to Dak. The difference between those two teams, the run game in Tennessee and the lack of a run game as it appears in Dallas, that's going to force Dak to throw the ball. I think he has value to your team. I probably, as I always like to say, this fantasy football thing is all about opinions. So by no means do I feel like I'm the only opinion. But I think when looking at this, I feel like you might be giving up a player that you might want back in Dak if you were to make this trade. So I think there's reason to think that keeping Dak on your team might be a good thing to think about here. So that would be my thought. I hate to say, if when questions are asked like this, if I don't think they're all that great of an idea, it makes me kind of be hesitant to want to say it. But in this case, I usually try to back up my opinions with what information I have. And like I always say, whichever way you go, I do hope those guys crush it for you. But I think to me, I would consider keeping Dak and letting this season play out because he could be a guy that could be really awesome for you going forward. And he was off to such a great start last year. To see what happens this year, I think might be worth it for you. Either way, Kevin, let me know how it works out for you. I'll be interested to see if you end up making that trade or not. Either way, hopefully that you're able to continue to crush it in your leagues. Hope you're already 1-0, as some of us are. I know I got a couple of leagues that were not what I wanted the first week, 0-1. So got to work on those things as the season goes through. So we'll do our best. I'll put one more notification up here for those of you that want to get in at some late chats here. We have one more game to recap. I didn't do a full graphic for the game that was on tonight. I talked about that one earlier, but The live chat remains open for the rest of the show. Feel free to jump in there with any further questions that you have. Again, for those of you that are watching on replay, love to hear from you. Feel free to drop us your comments as well. And in addition to the live chat, before we do our final game recap, I'm going to put up this other notification here and let you know about this new game that we have called 6 Picks. And this is a weekly game that we'll be keeping the standings for all season long. And essentially what it is these are 6 fantasy matchups that occur within the same game. So just like your roster would be, or just like your lineup, this quarterback, 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, 1 tight end. So we go through and we find 6 interesting matchups that are in the same game. And one of them this week will certainly be the New Orleans-Carolina game where Kamara and McCaffrey are in the same game. And we just want to have you guys go ahead and show off your skills. Pick the winner, see who you think is going to do better. We did 6 picks this game. It was pretty interesting this past week. And again, this is just kind of the way it works. So you're going to pick all 6 matchups. There will be a video giving you those 6 picks. You must make those picks on that video. And I will say this also, if you play the game, we're keeping track of the standings based on your actual account name. So if you change your account name during the season, then it's gonna throw off your stats because it'll be showing up as a different name. So just keep that in mind as you go. But that is the game. PPR scoring will keep the standings all year. And we close the picks out on Sunday each week. So just want to let you know about that. Keep an eye out for those videos. And then we do have one more game to recap before we call it a night here. So I will go ahead and get my screen set up to that last game. And that is the Sunday night game that we saw between Chicago and the Rams. This deal in Chicago to me is just, when are they going to put Justin Fields in there for the whole thing? I mean, I don't have, it's not like have a rooting interest in Chicago. I just can't imagine if you're a Bears fan having to, nothing against Andy Dalton. It's nothing personal, but I think most people, he's been in the league long enough, kind of know where he's at. And I think it seems like if you're a Chicago fan and you have an opportunity at a new player that could have some upside, that you kind of want to see him out on the field. So I know they did use him some, but Dalton's still their main guy. 6.54 from the quarterback side of things. A nice game for David Montgomery. I was glad to see some nice production there. I wasn't sure how that was going to work out this year with Tariq Cohen still out. That was kind of the same situation where Montgomery last year was getting most of the work. Damian Williams worked his way in there a little bit this game as well. But for Montgomery, it was 144 on the ground with a touchdown. Did have 1 catch as well. So 19-4, a nice day and a nice productive player for your team if you have Montgomery. Allen Robinson, not so great. 11 targets, only turned that into 9.5 fantasy points. It's gonna be one of those things where this is gonna change around a little bit as the year goes on, depending on what they're doing with that team. On the other side of things for the Rams, obviously new players to speak for there. Matthew Stafford, 3 touchdowns, 24-34 for his day. Cooper Kupp had a nice day, 10 targets, 108 yards with a touchdown, 23-8. We saw Van Jefferson moving on up there, 3 targets, 2 catches, touchdown, 80 yards, 16. Robert Woods, who is always continues to be the most unpredictable player to me. Like, it seems like Robert Woods should have more good days than he has, and I just don't know where they are. I have him in a couple of rosters this year, so I hope that those good days are on their way. But only 4 targets, 27 catches, and a touchdown, 12-4. I wish Robert Woods was a more predictable player. I feel like I have a difficult time predicting what he's going to do. Tyler Higbee was a decent amount of production there at the tight end spot. 6 targets, 5 catches, 68 yards, 11-8. As difficult as the tight end spot is, you'll take that, I'm pretty sure. But it's going to be what happens in LA to me is Darrell Henderson is the guy there. By the way, Rams win that game 34-14. I think that Darrell Henderson is the one that leads the way there in terms of year-long production. 15-7 in the first game there, 16 rushes, 70 yards with a touchdown. Had 1 target as well. Didn't probably need to be throwing the ball all that much with the lead there. But I like Darrell Henderson a lot for the rest of the year. Sony Michel, as we thought, it's not like it turned into a split there. Now, perhaps he will split more of the time once he's more familiar with the offense, but he only had 1 rush attempt in that game. So Henderson's the guy. In the past with the Rams, it's been kind of a split type situation. And now, there have been years where they haven't gone that way, like with Todd Gurley there, and he did most of the work. So if that's what you get out of Darrell Henderson and he returns good value for you, you got him a little bit later in your drafts. So that's going to be a chance to get a good amount of points there. So I'm looking forward to Henderson. I know I got him in a bunch of spots. He's one of the more drafted players that I had just because of where he was. His availability once you got in those later rounds. So that's the rundown of the weekend's game. That was week 1. We look forward to week 2 now. I'm going to take a look at, I see one more chat here. So let me see if I got this in here. And then it's MB that says, thanks for the info. Great job. And no, I say, as always, MB, I want to thank you guys for being on the chat because like I always say, it's way better for us to talk fantasy football with you guys than just to talk to you guys. So we appreciate you guys all being on the chat. You really make the show. It's waiver wire time now into week 2. There are a bunch of players out there. I know I talked about before. Elijah Mitchell to me is the player that is the must to try to get after week 1. San Francisco backfield is always interesting, but he certainly has the most upside that I see. But there are some other players that are in there that could have some impact for your team. You can't win your league in the draft. You might be able to lose your league in the draft. I know that's true. I've probably done that before in the past in some leagues too. But what you guys do throughout the season to continue to improve your team and make those moves is key. As you go along. 17 games this year, so it's an extra game, which is the advantage to those of you that are going out there and doing your homework. So if you're watching this stream or if you watch other streams on YouTube. Then that's you. You're going out there, you're doing the homework, and those are the players. You guys are the ones that have the chance to actually make a nice season out of it by putting in the work. So we hope that's working out all well for all you guys. And absolutely, we're glad that we were able to kind of throw you some information tonight, and we appreciate all the chats and look forward to seeing all you guys again on future shows. So as I always say, week 1's in the books. It's on to week 2. Good luck at fantasy. We'll see you next time. And I'll click the right button this time. Have a good night.